Today we're going to talk about a subject that I think is very important in the world of magic, and it's something that's not really talked about by a lot of magicians, and that is practice. How do you practice as a magician? How do you practice your card tricks? How do you practice to actually improve upon your skills? Now, the truth of the matter is that magic is a discipline, much like a martial art, much like an acquired skill. You're not going to be able to do magic right off the bat without some sort of practice and without some sort of overt effort into improving yourself. And one of the questions that I get a lot, especially on live streams or maybe in the comments of YouTube videos, is how can I improve this sleight? How can I do my pass better? How can I do a spread call and make it look smooth? And the real answer to all of these is practice. There's no avoiding practice in magic, and there's no way that you're going to do any sort of shortcut to circumvent the necessity in order to get these moves smooth. So today I'm going to give you guys a little bit of tips, things that I've done over the years, and hopefully have you avoid some of the pitfalls that I think people fall into when practicing magic today. One of the first tips that I have is to practice in context. When it comes to context, what I mean by that is you want to practice a move, you want to practice an idea, you want to practice a sleight in the context of when you're going to perform it. I think that there's a big difference between just learning how to do a pass and learning how to do a pass in the context of an actual routine. When are you going to do the pass? How are you going to do the pass? In what sense does a pass take place? Those are all important questions that you're going to have to address when actually performing. So if you're just doing a pass and practicing the moves and practicing the individual aspects of the actual move itself, you're not going to get as much from that as if you practice the pass in the context of an actual routine and the actual trick that you're going to be performing it in. So it's very important to practice a sleight, practice a move in the context of the trick that you're going to perform it, and practice the whole thing as opposed to practicing the individual parts. Now, when you're learning these moves, an additional tip to encompass this is to slow down. One of the unfortunate side effects of a visual medium like video is that we're trying to emulate what we see. And it's natural, it's something that I try to do whenever I watch videos of performers that I looked up to, but we tend to emulate and copy things that we see here. And sometimes this person, actually, as a matter of fact, most of the time, the person that we're watching is way more skilled than we are. So we're trying to emulate their actions. We're trying to copy their actions without that practice. So one of the things that I recommend is to slow down. So if you're doing a trick, if you're practicing a trick that involves a pass, if you're practicing a trick that involves any sort of sleight, slow down. Slow everything down to the point where you are almost feeling like you are in slow motion. The reason for this is because you are training your body, you are training your muscles, you are training your fingers to be in the correct placement. Now, when you start improving and when you start seeing that your actions become a little bit smoother, that's when it's okay to speed up. However, in the beginning, it's very important to slow down. And even that's something that I do to this day when it comes to learning a move. I don't jump into it right off the bat. I try to do the move as slowly as possible so I train my fingertips, so I train my hand to know where the fingers are supposed to be, so I understand the context of it, and so that I see any sort of imperfections that could arise when actually doing a trick in a regular speed. So slow everything down. If you're doing a sleight, if you're practicing a sybil, for example, slow everything down to the point where it just feels like you're doing everything in slow motion. And what you're going to see is that when your fingertips develop these actions in slow motion, you're going to be able to do it faster because your fingers know where to be. You've developed the muscle memory necessary to accomplish the sleight or the move or the flourish. So those two tips are going to help tremendously, practicing in context and doing it in slow motion. However, we tend to think that perfection is something that's attainable, and it's not. Let's just be realistic. Perfection is impossible. Excellence is probable. So let's think about that. Perfection is something that you're never going to attain. Even if you practice a sleight for years on end, you get it down, you get it perfect to your standards, there's still going to be something that you're going to miss. There's still going to be something that's not exactly perfect about it. Perfect, you can't achieve. Perfect means that there's absolutely no flaws. And yes, you could practice to the point where you're excellent. And yes, you could practice to the point where the flaws are so minimal that you don't even see it, but there are still flaws there. And there will always be flaws because we're human. We're not robots. So that's important to know when you're practicing certain moves and certain sleights, because on video, typically you're going to see a magician do something that appears to be perfect. You know, I do this when it comes to, for example, Instagram videos. When it comes to doing certain videos, I want to make sure that the video comes out as perfect as possible. But that's not a realistic scenario because I have complete control of what the camera sees. I have 100% control as to what you see when I edit the videos. And so does everybody else that does sleights and does magic on camera. They have 100% control of their environment. In a real life performing situation, you're not going to have 100% control. You're going to try to have as much control as you possibly can because you are performing for people. But at the same time, you never know yourself what people are going to do until you're in that situation. You don't have control over the lighting. You're not going to have control over what they say. You're not going to have control over all these external factors. You can only have control over what you do. And the best thing to circumvent any sort of problem is to have an adequate amount of practice that you've done. So just because you see something done on camera that looks perfect and is amazing, don't think that that's how it's going to be in real life. Because oftentimes, including with me, there's reshoots, there's retakes, there's edits, there's cuts. So there's a lot of things that you guys might not necessarily be aware of that really strive to achieve the illusion of perfection. But perfection really is impossible. Again, excellence is probable, and it's only probable with practice. Now, the good thing about practicing magic is that I don't think it's rarely ever work. It's never been considered work for me. Anytime I've ever practiced a move, a cut, a sleight, it's never been work for me. And I think that's one of the things that sets it apart from other means and other artistic things. When it becomes work, I think that's when it should be something that you should think twice about, because it's really fun. You're just fiddling with the cards in your hands. You're fiddling with moves, with individual sleights. You're practicing certain aspects, and it's never work. And that's the best thing about it. Now, there is a limit as to where you could practice. You know, I wouldn't necessarily be practicing in public. You know, I wouldn't necessarily be practicing in places where people could see me. I'd rather practice in the comfort of my own home, in front of the mirror, in front of a camera, in front of certain things that would aid me and help me in improving my magic. So luckily, when it comes to card magic and when it comes to card sleights, it's a very fun thing to practice. It's a very fun thing to get down. And it's very rewarding when you finally nail a move that you've been practicing for months or maybe years on end. When I first learned to pass and I first actually got it down and the packets actually switched, I was so happy that I finally got it down. You need to understand, when I was first learning to pass, it was like one of these sort of actions over here, and I was doing everything cramped up, and it was just tight. And when I finally actually nailed the pass in a way that I thought was great, it was such an achieving moment in my life that really I couldn't compare it to much else. So just try to have fun when you practice. Try to make it a fun thing. So don't necessarily think of it as work. Think of it as improving a skill that is special to you. Another thing that's of grave importance is angles. Angles are important. So don't think that you're going to just be able to practice one sort of angle. You're standing in front of the mirror, you're doing one move in one sort of way, and that's going to be enough to have you practice the move effectively. You need to be aware of angles. You need to be aware of what the camera, what you are seeing in the mirror. And that's why I recommend the camera. The camera is the best thing to do because the camera does not move. A mirror is just stuck there and you're going to play to the mirror. For example, a camera, you're going to see things with the camera that you're not going to be able to pick up with the mirror. So that's why I recommend videotaping yourself. Set up your phone in different angles and do the move from different sort of places. So do the move from the worst angle. Do the move from one of the better angles. Do the move from an extreme angle. Do the move in every single angle that you have possible. See what you're doing, see how it looks, and then see what could be done to improve on that. But angles are key. So don't think that just because you're practicing a move in one sort of way, that's going to fly in actual performance. It's going to be very important to know what certain angles are seeing, what certain angles aren't seeing, and cater your performances to that. So if you see that a move, it works for this angle, try to angle your body in a way that that move becomes invisible, at least to that particular spectator. If that move is going to be something that's visible to other spectators, make sure that you group them in correctly so that they don't see the move. And of course, that's going to be something that you're going to learn with practice and through failure, which is my next point. Don't be afraid of failure. Failure is one of the things that leads to improvement. And I think that's what some people are afraid of. They're afraid of performing for people and failing. That's one of the best ways to improve. Now, you don't want to fail all the time. You don't want to make failure a habit. However, when you do fail, it provides you a learning experience as to know what not to do the next time. So you become increasingly optimized when it comes to your performance, to the point where you know all the potential hazards and the potential issues that could arise, and better yet, you know how to avoid them. So when practicing, don't be afraid of failure. Don't be afraid to whiff a move. Don't be afraid to drop cards, because that's just part of the process. As I mentioned earlier, because the camera is unwavering, there's an issue when it comes to seeing other performers perform on camera in that we want to emulate them and we want to copy them. And typically what works for them might not work for you. So when it comes to a magician explaining a sleight, explaining a move, explaining a technique, keep in mind that they have different hands, they have different sensitivities, they have different muscle control, they have different sort of things that inspired them to do the move that way that might be different for you. So practice a move, try to get it as best you can, but understand that if there's something that's not happening or not clicking, it might work for them and it might not necessarily work for you in the way that they're describing it. So see what you could vary up, see what you could change on your end to try to make the move work. This happened to me while learning the Revolution cut years ago. I remember trying to understand what Brian Tudor was saying and trying to put my fingers in the exact specifications that he was making, and it didn't work for me. So I just practiced the move and tried to get it down and then try to do different things. And then eventually I just did the move once and I was able to do it every single time from then. And I just couldn't explain it. So it was one of those things where I was trying to emulate him and it didn't work out because of the simple fact that he has different hands. His fingertips are fucking massive. So it didn't work for me the same way that it worked for him. So I had to modify the grip and I had to do a couple different things for it to work for me. But ultimately I did, and I was able to get it to work for me. So those are just a couple tips, a couple ideas for you to better practice and better optimize your practice as opposed to just being in front of the mirror, doing one move over and over again and then seeing how that works. The best way to do it, at least in my opinion, is to practice the tricks, practice everything in context. So if you're going to do a routine, if you're going to do an action, practice the entire thing. And when you fail, start from the beginning. It's a discipline. It's something that's going to take practice, but eventually these are the best tips to get you to be the best performer that you could possibly be. So this is a little bit of a fun routine you could use to practice a bunch of shuffles and some sleights that you would probably end up practicing anyways in the context of an actual trick itself. So for this, we're going to have a card picked. In this case, it's this one right here. Very, very in focus. Yeah, boy. Okay, so that card is lost on the deck, and you're going to demonstrate to the spectator different shuffles from around the world. This one is the overhand shuffle. You might see this in more casual situations. You're never going to see a dealer from Las Vegas shuffle the cards like this. You know why? Why? Because they're face up. Because they're face up. They'll shuffle face down, which is a lie because they can't pick the cards up and shuffle them. This is the Hindu shuffle. You'll see this in parts of Asia, maybe India, China. The Chinese, they shuffle, or the Japanese, they shuffle like this. I'm pretty sure you've seen this in anime. This one is the Jewish shuffle. You know why it's called that? Because the cards are passing over. You see that? This is the Russian shuffle because the cards are rushing one after the other. This one is the overhand shuffle. Oh, did I already show you that? Did I already show you that? This is the riffle shuffle, right? You see that done a lot by people. This one, you know what this is called? You know what this is called? This is called showing off, telling you how little of an actual life I have. That's what this is. But this one's my favorite one. This one right here. You see what that is? That's your card. That's. Oh yeah, that's what it is. Where did it? Okay, so that is just a little bit of a fun trick you could use to practice some shuffles, some cuts. You could vary it up. You could add some. You could take some away. But ultimately, you're just controlling the card in different ways. That's all that's happening here. So you're getting a card. You're controlling it to the top in whatever way you want. Over here, I'm using the double undercut. You could also use the Mahatma control, which I've taught on a YouTube video. However, it's going to be part of an advanced overhand shuffle technique class here. So here the 9 of hearts in this case is controlled to the top of the deck in whatever way you want. And now you're going to go through a series of shuffles to show the spectator different ways of shuffling from around the world. The first one that I do is an overhand shuffle with the deck face up. Now the way I retain the top card is through the milk shuffle that we taught in the overhand shuffle lesson. So I'm pressing with my fingertips and I'm shuffling this way so that card stays on top. That's the first thing. And I'm saying, this is a more casual shuffle. You know why dealers will never use a shuffle like this? Oh, why? Because the cards are face up. A little stupid gag, but it works. And it allows you to turn the cards face down, do an overhand shuffle where you shuffle the first card into your hand and then shuffle the rest of the cards off. So now their card is on the bottom of the deck. So that's again covered by that little stupid line. They shuffle face down. Actually, they're not allowed to pick the cards up in their hands anyways. So now you could do a Hindu shuffle by picking up from the middle and shuffling off this way retaining the bottom stock like we talked about in the Hindu shuffle video. So here we're saying, you know what this one is? This is the Hindu shuffle, popular in parts of Asia. You see them shuffle in anime like this, and many of your favorite Naruto Shippudens. That's the way they shuffle. You could do the Passover. You could do the Passover cut if you know how to do a one-handed cut. This is a little bit more advanced because you are retaining a break as you do the one-handed cut. So you could still do this. This is going to be in the advanced flourishing section lesson, which is coming up. But you do this one if you want to do the little gag. This is a dribble. So you're going to say this is the Russian shuffle with one card rushing after the next. And now you could do whatever shuffle you want to get this to the top. So I do an overhand shuffle and I go, this is the overhand shuffle. And I might say, oh, did I already show you that one? I already showed you that one. Oh, too bad. But that allows me to get their card from the bottom to the top by just overhand shuffling. And when it comes to the last couple cards, I'm just running off. So I'm just running off single cards until I get to that last card, and that becomes the top card. And now I do whatever false cut I want that's fancy. So I say, you know what this is called? This is called showing off. In the previous lesson, you guys have a couple false cuts that you could use. You could use this one. You could use the pendulum, the Troy Hoosier pendulum cut, the ones that I taught in the previous lesson. But if you know any sort of cardistry, right now would be the point to use it in the context of an actual card trick. You see where you could use it. But whatever it is that retains that top card on top and lets you still show off and make the joke, you know, that's called showing off. And here you have two options as to how you could reveal their card. One way is to do a slip cut in the middle and say, that one's my favorite one. You know why? Because that one is your card. That's one way to do it. The slip cut is very simple. You're just lifting up halfway in the deck, using your left thumb to drag that top card out jogged onto this half as you drop that half back on top. And then that leaves one card out jogged. So here it just looks like this. And you say, that one's my favorite shuffle because this one is your card. Or you could do something like that. Or at this point, what you could do is you could actually drop all the cards apart from their card. The way I would do this is that I just take their card with my left hand, and I'm going to swing cut packets onto my left hand while retaining a break right there, separating their card from the rest of the deck. And I'll just swing cut packets, at some point dropping all of them, and I go, oh, well, that one's called your card right here. And it ends up being a cute little gag. Of course, you're going to have to pick cards up off the floor, but it's still a cute little routine that you guys could do to practice your cuts and practice your shuffles in the context of an actual trick. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope you guys enjoyed that lesson. It really does provide me an opportunity to just give you guys a little bit more than just tricks and trick. It's more theory, which I think is definitely more important in learning magic and trying to improve. So I hope you guys definitely enjoyed that. Thank you guys again for supporting me. It really means a lot, and it really does help tremendously. So thank you guys. I'll see you guys in the next lesson.